Now, we are so thrilled to introduce you to one of the most impactful leaders of all time, someone who has inspired our journeys, as well as those of so many leaders around the world. Internationally known as Africa's Iron Lady, Nobel laureate President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is a leading promoter of freedom, peace, justice, women's empowerment, and democratic rule. As Africa's first democratically elected female head of state, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has led Liberia through reconciliation and recovery following the nation's decade-long civil war, as well as the Ebola crisis, winning international acclaim for achieving economic, social, and political change. In 2018, President Sirleaf founded the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center for Women and Development. The organization aims to be a catalyst for change across Africa by helping unleash its most abundant, untapped power. It's women. And at this time, we are honored to pass the mic to Madam President to provide today's address, which will be followed by a Q&A. Thank you, Madam President.
Well, what a treat. A treat to have an opportunity to interact with, what, 180 of you said? Boy. I just listened to those of you who have spoken, and I just see young people like yourself with the enthusiasm, the drive, the capacity, just wanting to show how much you are engaged in civic action, in community engagement. I think that's so wonderful. And then, you know, you said, I think I read, you just said I was going to make a speech or an address. Well, let me say this. Speeches are now meant for the United Nations. Speeches are meant for, you know, big events where people talk. Let's just say I'll do some remarks. And then we'll have this opportunity when the questions you have posed, you can go over them, or you can have some new questions, and then we'll just have fun. We'll just talk about all the things you have asked and I have responded to, and we talk. Now, both Justice and Nia have mentioned what I call the two areas of young activism. The pre-communication and technological revolution, and then the post, how you fall into different categories in how you express your drive, your participation in civic action. Pre-technological and communication revolution, young people engaged in civic action through church matters, Sunday schools, school activities like school groupings, sports activities, being able to Girl Guides and all those things that brought young people together for the opportunity to share experiences, to be able to talk to each other, sometimes without getting full endorsement of mothers and fathers, and wanting to make sure, particularly if you're a girl, make sure you stay orderly, make sure you know, sports activities that give you an opportunity for interaction. Make sure that you act like a lady. Remember, don't climb trees, don't play football. Do all those things that make you prepare like a woman. Well, those were, but you still found the means through all the things that have been mentioned and things that I mentioned to get together, to talk to each other, to challenge maybe in school, the thoughts as conveyed by teachers, wanting to be proactive in saying, standing up, to be, that's how leadership started at that age. Wherever you were, whether it was a church group or Sunday school group, whether it was associations of young people in the schools or sports activities, there's always someone who's willing to stand up and express their voice. Someone willing to say something, someone willing to challenge the statement and remarks of others. And that's how we saw leadership bloom. So many would take that challenge. But then, we now move into the age when communication has brought us all together. It's no longer those within your community, those within your nation, those within your region or your continent. You're now into the global space where the interactions between yourselves and others take place, those across oceans, those across wires. And then we also find that the limitation of expression, when we get to those who are tied into their laptops and tied into their telephones, where the interaction are so limited, but all the ability to be able to access all of these things that you see on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, nobody's talking to each other anymore. Everybody's so tied down to being able to place Google and to get all the update information through the communication revolution. I think where we are today, in this global environment, the global landscape that is so full of crisis and uncertainties, it's good to see young people begin to reclaim their future, reclaim the ability for action, the ability for inclusion, the ability for networking among themselves, recognizing that in this global environment, you have to have a voice. You have to have participation. And those among you must take leadership. Leadership by being able to stand up, to speak out, to have a voice. And I just listened to Nia, I think it was, when you said how in the park you were able to challenge some action on the part of the government. Perhaps there was something to do with the structure of the society, something to do with policies that had been announced by the government that young people felt did not rightfully give them their role. And so it matters again. The national landscape makes a difference. In Canada, you're lucky. You can take action, you can speak out, you can exercise your views and your feelings, and you can get together as groups in your community to sit and talk about, is the government doing the right thing? Is the structure of the government right? Can we have a different political system that gives more gender equity, more equal opportunity to young people? Are their policies the right one to ensure that the freedoms of expression, are established and are available to all? Does our system have the kind of humility where we can be able to stand up and yet be able to see ourselves not having monopolies of ideas and knowledge, but being able to recognize the values of others, that we cannot get ahead unless we have those who we can share our eyes, unless there's shared values, unless there's changes in the recognition of others in their own place in society. That's where the young people are now headed. And in doing so, they're beginning to stand out and to challenge the status quo, to come in as groups. And what our caution now today is, how do you manage this process of change and reform in such a way that it balances the right for free expression, the right for activism, the right for challenges? How do you balance it with the need for order in the society? How do you ensure that protests do not turn violent so that this destroys the very nature of what they seek in terms of their participation? Those are the challenges that we all face as we try to provide as leaders, like myself, to provide that environment where you have a right to do all the things that make you an activist, that enables you to stand up and take your right society, to be able to get to that to which you are entitled. Having spent the years in academia, being able to mobilize knowledge, intelligence, how do we ensure that your contribution to society is positive, is contributory, and it blends into the rest of society, recognizing that this balance of being able to be an activist does not lead to the place where the challenge goes out beyond the scope of reasonableness, because the reform you want is too far, too much, too fast. And that's where we try to now find the balance between where the society is, the status quo, its structures, the architecture, the policies and all, that enables it to also enable the young people to take their rightful roles. And it's time for that. It's time for transformation. It's happening in every society, and there's no one stopping that. I think what we want to do is to manage this process that you can see the older ones like myself gracefully fading away and being able to turn it over to you, where you take the mantle, you take the baton, and you move to society. But be careful that when you do so, you recognize the values of history, the values of culture, the values of tradition, that those things make for a great society, and they made for great societies in the past. Not societies that were open enough, much to autocracy, but still with enough value to have brought it to this point in time in terms of development and the readiness for young people. This does not apply to all countries, of course. You've got different variations. You've got different systems, political systems, religious systems, traditional systems that may set the scope and the pace by which changes are accomplished. But I think each of us in those societies must find a way that respects the value of age, that respects the values of culture and tradition, but at the same time, be active enough to stand up and to ask for your right to leadership. Your right to leadership at the highest level, so that nothing stops your ambition, nothing stops your goal but yourself. And for you, the responsibility is yours at first. The responsibility to rise above your own fears, the responsibility to see yourself as a mother, if you've come to that age or that stage in your life, to see yourself as a woman with all the virtues of a woman, the virtues of caring, respect for each other, the virtues of compromises, the values of togetherness, the protection of life, the protection of people that you bring, the sensitivity that women bring to leadership. But beyond that, equal in capacity, in knowledge, in courage, equal in every way that makes you ready for competitive endeavor. No woman wants giveaways. What you want is just the equal opportunity to be what you want to be in accordance with your own energy, your own ability, your own readiness to stay the course, to seek that which you want. That's our message to young people. That's our call to you for activism, for community engagement. That you take that step. You call out, you call for the reform you want, but do it on the basis of knowledge, do it on the basis of information, do it on the basis of proper communication. Do it in such a way that we listen, that we begin to open it up while respecting, like I said, respecting the values of the past and the cultures and the traditions that exist in every society, the religion that exists, taking advantage of the places where there are cracks in those places that have been much too stagnant over historical times, but recognizing those cracks and being able to use them for an opening up, and opening up at the pace and loud in a particular endeavor of the country. So there we are. Like I say, I was going to make some remarks. No speech. Sometimes speeches are not necessary. I don't want to take a piece of paper and read you a long story of my life, and a long story of what others have done, but just to throw certain things at you and then invite you now to respond. Let's have fun.
Thank you, Madam President. That was really, really extraordinary. And we're so grateful for the way in which you contextualize our generation, and specifically this concept of how our generation is reclaiming our future, reclaiming inclusion, and reclaiming actions. Those are the values that are so incredibly imperative in today's world. And I think that as young people, we want to be as revolutionary and as transformative as possible. But your metaphor of looking through history and identifying those cracks and those openings that actually lay the platform for change is so incredibly important. That means that when we're calling for change and reform, we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. Instead, we can look to those that came before us, those trailblazers who have actually made incremental change and progress possible. And we can build upon that great work as we take on that mantle of leadership. So thank you so much for those remarks, as you say, and really just being so inspiring this afternoon. And we're looking forward to continuing this conversation and diving deeper into your experiences.